Hello, hello. Welcome to day 8 of the Business English Idioms 30-day challenge. Apologies, I'm going live a little bit late. Well, not a little bit, a lot later than I'd planned, in the evening instead of the morning. But regardless, whether you join live or you watch on the replay, welcome. Today for day 8, we are looking at idioms related to considering and evaluating in a professional context. As always, drop a line in the comments. Tell me, where are you watching from? I always love to know where you are tuning in from. And I'll always just start very briefly by reminding you that idioms are expressions that we need to learn on their own. We can't always figure out the answer. We have to learn the meaning of it. They're used in spoken English a lot, especially these ones are used a lot in business contexts, but not for business writing. And be careful that you don't use all the idioms all at once. We want to use them sparingly, and I really recommend that you notice which of these idioms you come across or you find in daily life, and you pay attention to those ones. If you were watching yesterday, tell me, what was your favorite idiom from yesterday's lesson? Have you done any of the prompts? Have you practiced them? Today we are covering these idioms: to be of two minds, to hedge one's bets, to weigh one's options, to get a read on something, do your due diligence, and play it by ear. Have you heard of any of those? Tell me if you have. I'm going to start, as always, by giving you all of the idioms all at once. Now, this is not how we would use them in spoken language or even in written language, but I want you to see the idioms in context and get a feel for them. So that's why I'm going to start by reading this out, and then at the end we will read it again, and hopefully it will make more sense. You'll have a better understanding and a feel for the idioms. Okay, so the hiring team was in the final stages of selecting a new lead software developer. Initially, the team was of two minds about the top candidates, so they called a meeting to weigh their options. Some members leaned towards, that means they favored or they liked more. They wanted to hire, they preferred, they leaned towards a candidate with extensive experience, while others favored, or you could say leaned towards, while others favored a fresh graduate with innovative ideas. Okay, so paragraph 1 is about the team who are trying to decide between two people. To make the best decision, they decided to hedge their bets by inviting both candidates for a second round of interviews. Let's get a read on their problem-solving skills with a practical test, suggested HR manager Mark. We also need to do our due diligence by checking their references and past project portfolios. We need to be really clear about the qualities we are looking for. We can't just play this by ear. Okay, so some of those you might have come across, some of them you might be able to figure it out from the context, but there might be a few where you're thinking, I don't really get this extract. This article here, it doesn't really make sense because some of the idioms are tricky. We'll go through the idioms and then we'll read the article again at the end. So the first one that we're going to look at is to be of two minds. Two example sentences for you. I'm of two minds about accepting the new job offer. It is more pay, but it is also far more work. She's of two minds whether to relocate for work or stay in her current city and take on a longer commute each day. So relocate means to move to a new location, and then a commute is the journey that you specifically do to work and also returning from work. So this person is trying to decide, oh, do I move for my work or do I stay and I'll just have a longer journey? So they're making a decision. And if you are of two minds, it means you are struggling to make a choice. You're considering two things, and or maybe more than two things, but you are not sure. Part of you is yes, and part of you is no. And so you are of two minds, undecided or unsure about something. So we can say that you are feeling indecisive, or you are torn or unsure. There's a good word that you can use. You can say, I am torn. Okay, well, tear means to rip up, but in this context of making a decision, you can say, I am torn between this or this. I am torn between one decision or the other. So it's quite a nice phrase, not specifically business English, but useful. Okay, so to be of two minds on a subject or about a subject. Over to you. Have you ever been of two minds about a major career decision? So there's a sentence stem there for you, and I would love if you want to have a go at using the idiom in the comment section. That would be amazing. Practice there. You could use the sentence stem or you could create your own. So I was once of two minds about, and then maybe explain why you are no longer of two minds, but practice using it immediately. And of course, just a reminder that you can use these prompts to have a conversation with ChatGPT or another AI tool. If you open the ChatGPT app, press to speak, and then say, ChatGPT, I'm going to speak for 2 minutes on the topic of a time that I was of two minds about something in my career. When I'm finished, I will say finished, and you will give me feedback. And then we will have a back and forth conversation. On my YouTube channel, there's loads of videos that help you use AI for speaking, but just a reminder that you can use these prompts in that way to get you immediately using and practicing with the idioms. Okay, the next one, to hedge one's bets. He's hedging his bets by applying to multiple companies. She decided to hedge her bets and invest in both stocks and real estate rather than focusing on one. So if you hedge your bets, it means you protect yourself against risk or loss by supporting more than one possible result. So in the picture there, you can see the lady on the trapeze. The best possible scenario is that she swings backwards and forwards, she does what she needs to do, and then she gets down through by using the stairs. The worst possible scenario is that you fall in some way. She's tied by the waist, but often people that do these circus acts are not, because they want to hedge their bets. They want to have a plan B or make sure that they are safe. She has a literal safety net so that if the first plan of being safe in the air doesn't work out, then she can go to the second plan of falling onto the safety net. So that's an example of she's hedging her bets. If it doesn't work out with what she's doing, then there's a safety net to catch her. So we can talk about to play it safe, to cover all bases, to diversify, or like I said, to have a plan B. We can hedge one's bets by or against something. So she is hedging her bets by having a safety net, or she's hedging her bets against there being danger. Okay, over to you. Can you think of a time when hedging your bets paid off? If something paid off, it worked or it was successful. So maybe something where, here's an example. Hedging my bets paid off for me when I applied to many universities, so that I could choose which ones I really wanted to go to. So people often do that. Rather than just applying to one, they'll apply to many to give themselves more options, more chances, and to hedge their bets. Okay, next one, to weigh one's options. Okay, of course, you know that weigh means to determine the weight of something, but to determine the weight of your options, well, let's look at that. Before making a final decision, she weighed her options carefully. They viewed a lot of office buildings and spent hours weighing their options before choosing a new office location. So, to weigh your options means to consider the advantages and disadvantages of different choices. So, like on a scale, you're kind of seeing, okay, this one is better or this one is better. Deciding between two, and looking at the good and the bad of both. So, um, evaluating all the good and bad things about each. So, evaluating your choices, considering alternatives, deliberating. There's a good word, a really formal word. Deliberating. So, in that example there, they were weighing their options before choosing a new office location. Really good word that you could use is they were deliberating over the options for the office, or they were deliberating about the options for the office. They were weighing their options. So we can weigh one's options before doing something or about something. Over to you. What helps you weigh your options when you have a tough choice to make? There's a good collocation. Tough goes with choice when you're talking about something that is difficult and it's hard to choose. So maybe you quite like both options. That would be a tough choice. Okay, so what helps you weigh your options when you have a tough choice to make? Okay, the next one, to get a read on something. He has a good poker face. I couldn't get a read on his reaction during the meeting. Okay, a poker face is a face that is very neutral, doesn't display emotion. I do not have a good poker face. All of my emotions are very prominently, very visibly displayed on my face most of the time. You can look at my face and understand what is going on emotionally. A poker face is when someone intentionally makes their face neutral, even though they might feel angry or stressed or any other emotion. They are purposefully not showing the emotion. And of course, that comes from playing poker, where you don't want to show your excitement that would demonstrate to your competitors that you have a good hand, you have good cards to play. So he has a really good poker face. I couldn't get a read on his reaction during the meeting. She tried to get a read on the client's needs before presenting her proposal. So if you get a read on something, it means you understand or interpret something or someone. So when they are saying he has a good poker face, they're saying, I can't understand his emotions. I can't read his reaction. I cannot understand the emotions behind the reaction. So to get a read on something is informal, and it means to gauge or assess or interpret. So those three synonyms there are much more formal. Informal would be to get a read on something, but that would still be used within a speaking within a professional context, in spoken English. So in that example of talking about trying to get a read on a client, for example, but it is a little bit more informal. Okay, what are some examples of good questions to ask to help your interviewer get a read on your level of interest in a job? What this question is saying is, at the end of an interview, when the people who are interviewing you say to you, "Do you have any questions?" At that point, what is a good question that you can ask that would make it clear that you're really interested? So when people are doing the interviews, it can sometimes be hard to get a read on the level of interest that the candidate has, because often candidates don't ask really interesting questions that demonstrate how excited they are about the job. If the interviewer says, "Do you have any questions?" and the candidate says, "No," then the interviewer can't get a read on whether the candidate is actually interested. Or if the interviewer asks, "Do you have any questions?" and the candidate says, um, well, not really, or what is the salary range, or when would I be starting, or kind of nondescript, bland, neutral questions. Again, it's hard to get a read. Versus if the candidate asks something like, what would you say is the best aspect of working here? That would be a question that would help the interviewer get a read on your level of interest. The interviewer would think, okay, this candidate is genuinely interested and they are truly wanting to know more about the position and the company. So there's a tricky question for you that will be useful for you to consider if you are applying for a job anytime soon. Okay, if you're applying for a job, you need to do your due diligence before you apply. We're going to talk about what that means. So she did her due diligence before signing the contract. They were considering merging, that means joining together. They were considering merging the two companies, but first had to do their due diligence in investigating the finances of both. Okay, so what do you think that means to do your due diligence? It means to thoroughly research or investigate before making a decision. To be diligent means to be careful and hardworking. So, of course, due means that it is needed or required. So basically, this is saying the required level of hard work in research. But that's a very common and formal and useful phrase, your due diligence. We often use it for really big things like buying a house or signing a contract for something really big. And so in a business setting, it's a really useful phrase. Make sure you do your due diligence and look at the finances of the other company before you go ahead and do a partnership with them. Irfan, thank you for the lovely comment. Goodness, that's made my day, that has. Welcome, and thank you for your kind comment. I massively appreciate it. And I'm glad that you are here and joining in. So welcome and thank you. Okay, so synonyms for due diligence would be investigate and research and verify. So you are really focusing on making sure everything is okay before you sign something or before you take the next step. So we can talk about doing due diligence before you do something or doing due diligence on something. Okay, over to you. Has your due diligence ever saved you from a bad choice? I know that it has for me a couple of times. I can think of situations where before I have gone and purchased a service, I have researched the company and discovered, their reviews are not so good. Maybe I will choose a different company. So a couple of times my due diligence has definitely saved me or helped me make better choices. Have a think about that. What would you say for you? Has your due diligence ever saved you from a bad choice? Okay, I think this is the last one, if I remember correctly. And this idiom, play it by ear. We're going to talk about this as our last one. Okay, so 2 examples. We don't have a set plan. We'll just play it by ear. Okay, in this context, set means fixed, prearranged. So we don't have a plan that has been determined in before things started. So we don't have a set plan or a prearranged plan. We'll just play it by ear. The second example, she considered having a strict agenda for the meeting, but decided against it, opting instead to play it by ear. Okay, so have a think. What do you think that means? And while you are thinking, I'm going to say welcome, Ibrahim. Thank you for your kind comment. I really massively appreciate that as well. And welcome here. And Irfan says, I did my due diligence before applying for that job. That is a fantastic sentence, completely correct. The correct usage of that. And that is a good context to use it. Before you apply for a job, you need to read the job advert, see if the salary is enough, see if your qualifications match what's required, research the company, research the kind of questions that they're going to ask you. All of that is a lot of research. And so applying for a job requires a really high level of research. And so it's totally correct to say I did my due diligence. I did all my research before applying for the job. So well done. Okay, play it by ear. Let's get back to that one. What do you think it means? Well, if you play something by ear, you decide how to respond to events as they happen instead of by an earlier plan. So playing it by ear means going with the flow, not having a fixed idea in advance what's going to happen. So we can talk about improvising, adapting, go with the flow. Go with the flow is very informal. A much more formal version of that is to say that we are going to do something in an ad hoc manner. Ad hoc manner means without pre-planning. It's a really formal, so useful for business context expression. So we decided to have a going away party, or not a going away, a retirement party for our colleague, but we didn't organize it. We decided it would be carried out in an ad hoc manner with people bringing in dishes and arranging the decorations on the day. So if you carry out something in an ad hoc manner, it means you go with the flow, you play it by ear. So play it by ear is useful. It's quite informal though. I think ad hoc manner is also really useful because it's very formal. Okay, over to you to practice with it. Do you prefer to play it by ear or have a detailed plan when working on a project? And this might vary for different situations. So think about, I do prefer or I don't prefer to play it by ear when working on a project. Or if you can't think about it in the context of a project, then you could think in the context of when you make any plans. Personally, I quite like to plan things out. I don't enjoy playing it by ear when I'm making plans with friends and family. I much prefer if we have a bit more of a plan, not a rigid plan, but a flexible little bit of a plan. How about you? Do you prefer to play it by ear or do you like a plan? What do you think? Okay, I think that was all of them. Yes, it was. Okay, we're going to read through the this extract that has all of the idioms used at once, and I'll stop and explain it as we go along, and hopefully it makes much more sense now that we have gone through the idioms. Okay, here we go. The hiring team, so that's the people that are interviewing to get somebody to come into the company. The hiring team was in the final stages of selecting a new lead software developer. Initially, the team was of two minds. So the team is not agreeing. They cannot decide amongst them. Some of them think it should be one person and some of them think it should be the other. So they're not agreeing. They're of two minds. So initially the team was of two minds about the top candidates. So they called a meeting to weigh their options. So they've decided, because they're not agreeing, they should have a meeting to talk about the good and the bad things about each of the people and what choice they should make. So they're having a meeting to weigh their options, to talk about their choices. Some members leaned towards, remember we said that favored, leaned towards a candidate with extensive experience, while others favored a fresh graduate with innovative, so that means new ideas. To make the best decision, they decided to hedge their bets. So they decided to kind of um, go with both candidates for the moment, right? Remember we said hedge their bets was to have a plan A and a plan B. So they decided to hedge their bets by inviting both candidates for a second round of interviews. Let's get a read on their problem-solving skills with a practical test. So let's get a read on their problem-solving skills means let's understand the way that they react to problem-solving. So let's get a read on their problem-solving skills with a practical test, suggested HR manager Mark. HR, human resources, so that's the person that would be helping with hiring people. We also need to do our due diligence. We need to do our appropriate research, our due diligence, by checking their references and past project portfolios. So if you're going to hire someone, you have to do your due diligence and call the people that are references. We need to be really clear about the qualities we are looking for. We can't just play this by ear. So he's saying we can't just talk to the people and decide if we like them. We have to decide in advance a plan for who we're going to pick and how. Like what qualities are we looking for? We can't just go with the flow here. We have to have a plan. Can't just play it by ear. Okay, hopefully that made a little bit more sense. Just a reminder that all of the slides will be placed into the free course that I'm creating as I go along. And you can find that in my free resource library. If you're watching on YouTube, it will be in the description shortly after the video is live. Let's do a really short quiz. Just 2 short questions. I'd love if you want to play along, whether you're live or on the replay. If you want to put your answer in as you're listening, that would be great. Okay, so question 1, what does it mean to be of 2 minds about something? A, to be in agreement, B, to be undecided, C, to be confident, D, to be enthusiastic. And then number 2, what does it mean to weigh one's options? A, to ignore choices, B, to consider alternatives, C, to rush into a decision, D, to limit possibilities. Okay, so for number 1, Ibrahim says 1B, to be undecided. Thank you for joining in. I always appreciate that. And you also have done number 2 as well. Yay! So you said number 2B. Okay, thank you for playing along. Let's see. Yay, you got it completely right. What does it mean to be of 2 minds? It means to be undecided. What does it mean to weigh your options? It means to consider the alternatives. Good for you. And I think you are the first person to play along. So I really appreciate that. And you did really well. Thank you. Okay, just remains to remind you that at the end of the slides, there is a listening. Goodness, I'm getting my words mixed up. There's a listening task, and it tells you how you can do the listening task. It's useful for practicing one of the idioms. I think there was something very briefly, I'm going to read through it and explain the context of the listening. So Sophia says, Mark, it seems everyone in the office is of 2 minds about the venue for the gala. And Mark says, what's the issue? Sophia says, there's a split between downtown or countryside. I just wanted to point out that when you say there's a split between something, what you're saying is there's a split in agreement. A split is a break, a crack. So there's a split between, that means half of the people think it should be downtown in the city and half of the people think it should be in the countryside. So they cannot agree. They are of 2 minds and they are split or in halves between these 2. So there's a split or a disagreement between downtown and countryside. Mark says, tough choice. I can see the appeal of both. Sophie says, what would you suggest? Mark says, I think we randomly choose one for this year and do the other choice next year. So you can click and you can listen at a fast or slow speed and try out that listening task and also access these slides to review. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining in, and those of you watching on the replay, and hope to see you for day 9 tomorrow. Take care. Bye.